Setting up. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. We're ready to roll. Welcome to the Confidence Interviews. I'm Joyce Fine. I'm founder of the Confidence Hustle and Building Confidence, the Facebook group. This brand new live series focuses on everyday single moms and other women who are absolutely killing it with their confidence. And through sharing these candid and honest stories, my hope is that you, the viewer, will be able to be inspired to build your confidence and achieve those really big dreams. So before we get started, I just wanted to explain to everybody how these interviews are going to go. And the format for tonight is that I'm going to be asking our special guest, Michelle Kaplan, who's right here. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
A bunch of questions, and she's about her confidence and you know how she got to where she is today and the accomplishments she has created for herself. And then at the end, we're going to do a Q&A and open it up for questions and comments. So throughout the discussion, if you something hits you after you hear one of Michelle's poems, because she's going to be reading a few of them for us this evening, and that's going to give us a lot to think about. So please feel free to put in the chat any thoughts, questions you have for her, and we will get to them at the end of our discussion. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our special guest this evening, Michelle Kaplan. Michelle is a single working mom, just like many of us here. And she authored and released her first book, which is called And a Love Story Within. And here it is. This was published in the fall of 2018. And it was recognized as Amazon's #1 hot new release for inspirational poetry. Congratulations, Michelle. It's so exciting. And now Michelle has a second collection of poems that's going to be released next month called Burst and Flourish. Michelle is a cancer survivor, and she has worked in corporate America for 30 years as a human resources professional, and Michelle is also a self-discovery coach. So welcome, Michelle Kaplan. I'm so excited that you're here tonight with us. So everyone has their own journey and their own story about developing and realizing their own confidence and their inner strength. And I was hoping that we could begin by leading off with a little bit about that. Can you share with us?
Yeah, because when I think of confidence, I, you know, if you have a lot or not, I mean, one poem I wanted to really start with is a time where I didn't have a lot of confidence. It was a couple of years ago, and you know, it was just at work, and I'll read the poem and then I could kind of comment afterwards.
Okay.
But this poem is in my book, first book, and it's called Message from the Tea Leaves. Let's just say it wasn't a great meeting. In fact, the whole day at work pretty much sucked. The blustery gray afternoon now matches the mood I suddenly find myself in. A nice cup of tea beckons me. Interesting, because I usually drink coffee, but I'm already wired on life. I grab my mug, pour in some hot water, and head back to my desk. Way in the back, in the second drawer on the left, is a tea bag that's been there too long. It'd have to do. As my tea brews, I notice in my peripheral vision words on the white square piece of paper at the end of the string attached to the tea bag. Be proud of who you are. I take sips of my tea as I work, allowing the liquid elixir to seep in, while repeating the message, each time slower and more deliberately. Be proud of who you are. Am I proud of who I am? Yeah, sure. I want to believe I do, yet the tear forming tells me otherwise. So, Joyce, as you had said in the introduction for me is, at a time, I've been divorced for many years now, since like 2003. And unfortunately, a year and a half later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and dealt with treatments and things like that. But afterwards, I really kind of was like, what am I waiting for? And, one of the things that I did was become a single mom, by adopting my daughter from
So
Guatemala.
wonderful.
Yeah, really cool. So she came home when she was 8 months, and now she's 13. And
Wow.
so that was just, and that was such a pivotal point for me, and it was really great. But when I was sitting at my desk, and that day, if you asked me what I'm not confident about, and what I was really thinking about, was I wasn't feeling like I was enough. I
Right.
just was sitting there. And for me, the theme was really about the struggle of like being a mom and work, right? So at work, you're running around, you're trying to get everything done, and that's not enough. And then you're racing out, and then you're home, and that's not enough. So it's like, I was just kind of feeling that, and that was like the angst. So it really wasn't like this big epiphany or this thing that was happening for me. It was really just like that last straw moment of kind of like, I'm just tired of feeling like I'm not enough.
Yes. And not being able to give 100% to one thing. I'm
Yes.
sure a lot of people can relate to the feeling, like you said, of just running around crazy, and it's just it's an overwhelming feeling. It's overwhelming.
It is. I talked to a lot of women about that. I mean, because I know it, and I've kind of gotten to a different place than that poem just a few years ago. But that really was how I felt, and I just wrote it down.
Wow, it's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure.
So, and when you're working on something, or how did you find the confidence that you needed to be able to put this book together, and then your second book, and kind of put it out there without feeling like, oh my God, I'm sharing my innermost thoughts with the whole world. And it's and it takes a lot of iron will, I would imagine, to be able to put it out there like that.
Actually, it's part that, but it's actually more the softening, that kind of happened. It's kind of like what happened with my confidence was like, there's some daily practices and things that I do. So, I have a coach. Coaches have coaches.
Yeah.
It's very hard to look at yourself in the mirror and get, a real sense of what you really need,
So would you be able to share with us what those daily practices you do are?
Yeah, so for me, it's like reading something inspiring, some type of personal development.
Yeah.
So I've always been fascinated with that, and so I do read in the morning. I wake up really early, and we'll start the morning just reading something inspiring, and then from there I'll write. And so the writing for me, there's two parts to it. One is I started writing to build my confidence, because when you think of confidence, it's trust. Right?
Yes.
It's trust. And so in a sense, I wasn't trusting my voice, and I really didn't even know what I wanted to say even. So a lot of times when I write, it's to help me clarify my feelings. And at first I was writing all this stuff on paper, and it was very overwhelming. And then I realized, the words were kind of sticking out for me, and I was getting really clear. So it was almost like an energy transfer. Like once I get it out on paper, so like all these things in my books and on my daily postings are really my journal.
Right.
So there was one part, like to your point of just getting it out there, putting it on paper. But the second part was, okay, now I want to wait, I'm not going to share this, like, because if everybody knew what I really thought, like nobody would ever talk to me again. Like nobody would hang out with me. Like, oh my gosh. And I started sharing it slowly with people. And then, through some serendipitous type of situation, it kind of was revealed that how mutually beneficial this is. Because
Great.
poetry is really universal. These are universal themes that you're capturing. And it kind of gets you into the whole brain of using your left, like, look, if you had all the answers, you would have figured it out. And so
That's for sure.
Poetry kind of taps into that intuitive side. It gets very creative and, could find the answer, and a lot of times changes the questions. So for me, it wasn't the will. It was like, okay, I think I want to share this with people, but I don't know if I want to get that vulnerable. So of course I wrote about it because that's what I did. And one of the poems I want to share, it's in my book coming out, but the poem is called Bolder, because I was really trying to be bolder in my life and what I wanted to do. And this was written at night, which is rare. So a lot of times I write in the morning. This one I wrote at night, and I was being kind of cheeky. I was like making fun of myself because I really did not want to share all of this stuff with people. And here I go, I'm doing it. So this was like part of the process for me, the daily practice of, that works for me. And the poem is called Bolder. Oh no, not that. I'd rather chew glass or poke a fork in my eyeball than that. I mean, really, just take a Sharpie and write sucker on my forehead. I thought being bolder meant being unapologetically outspoken. But no, it's much riskier than that, mostly leading to headaches and heartache. Being bolder means being vulnerable. Yep, that's the worst. So I obviously got through it, because part of it for me was, like you said, with confidence, is trusting my voice.
Yes.
And that type of thing. So.
And it also, it seems like with the poem, I think that everyone's got a different definition of what confidence is. And lots of times when you're first trying to find your voice and be confident, it's really not about being the loudest person in the room, right? Correct. It's more about that inner self-acceptance, no matter what. And it doesn't, and it doesn't have to be. So that's such a great poem. And also the theme of vulnerability comes up again and again. And, it's, you really aren't going to move forward if you can't figure out how to get vulnerable and let something out. If you keep yourself all tied in to yourself, it's like you never make any progress, or you don't have any change.
Exactly. What's really coming up for me is, it's like a lot of people are givers, right? Yeah. So most people are givers, but part of confidence is being able to receive and to really receive, right? So I know in the past you asked me about like criticism and like what happens, right?
And actually, I was going to ask you about that tonight too.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yes. Because
So in fact, after, now that, with Bolder, and, we were talking about the vulnerability and, what does confidence mean to every individual? It's a different thing. But when you're, now you've put this collection of poems together, and you've, like we've talked about, you've put it out there for the world to see unapologetically, and so let's say somebody disagrees with a poem, or they don't like something about your poetry. How do you handle that? What does that do to you? What are the voices saying to you inside your head?
Those voices, the scary voice, right? Yeah, not there. Yeah, and that was part of the process, I think, for me at least. I think any artist, whether if you draw, you sing, you dance, whatever your artistic or creative expression, it could also be business,
Yeah.
When you're
Mhm.
putting yourself out there, I think that you really have to be really clear about what you want to say,
Yeah.
because all the different ways to do it is just a different style or way to do it, but to really
Mhm.
be clear about what do I want to say versus what do I think people want to hear, because I'll either get writer's block or I get so I hate everything, like and it's really about
Mhm.
like what do I want to say. So when you kind of come from a place like when I post anything, whether it's a daily posting, or or if it's in a book, what I'm happy with it. I really am. Like it's something I
Mhm.
really want to express. It's kind of coming up for me. And a lot of times the poems aren't about me. Sometimes it's things that I observe and people like inspire me to kind of think
Yes.
about that. So it's really interesting because with poetry and with most forms of art, there's no right or wrong answer, right? It's like there's a lot of symbolism, there's a lot of metaphor. I love to
Mhm.
play with words and the different meanings, like when there's
Yes.
several meanings. And so a lot of times when I post something, especially you get the immediate feedback, and some people will say like, "Is this a positive poem or are we going negative?" It's actually very interesting to me. And I said, "I'll answer, but I really want to know what you think,"
Right.
because a
Mhm.
lot of times people will comment and I really didn't even realize. I'm like, well, I've learned something. I mean,
Very
that's
interesting.
amazing to me. So
So,
it's all just different perspectives. It's really where you're coming from.
right.
And it's kind of like when you listen to music. You can listen to a song a few years ago and it's great. And then all of a sudden you can hear it a few years later and it has like a different context and meaning for you.
That's
And
true.
you're the one who changed, not the
That's
song.
right.
You're
Yeah.
in a different
So,
place. So
so
the
when I'm here,
poetry and art does that too.
right. And so what I'm hearing you saying is whatever you're putting out there, it really has to be from within you and your heart. And then people can take what they want from it or
Yeah.
not. But that's part of being confident with whatever's going out there. As long as you know in your heart that you're happy with it, you did the best you could, and you're outputting to the world what you love, then whatever else happens, right?
Right. I mean, that's why
So
my book is called And is all, right? There's an
yeah,
abundance to it. So not
so
everybody's
great.
going to like everything,
Love
but there
it.
will be some people that it resonates with, and that's okay. But it's
Right.
really not the will, it's actually the softening within me that
Mm,
allows me to just be like, okay, it's okay. It's
so
and like I
great.
said, just being open and
Yes.
available and not taking it personally. Yeah.
So important for people to know that.
Yeah.
So if I guess the next question that I wanted to ask you was, how do you think, Michelle, your life would be different today if you didn't have the courage to put yourself out there with your poetry?
No, it'd be very different. It's like I've come a far way from that woman sitting at the desk,
Yes.
reading, am
Hmm.
I proud of who I am,
Yeah.
and that type of thing. And I think that, the thing that I get a lot, one of the questions I get a lot, and I just really want to clarify, is that I'm scared most days. Most days I'm actually like, what am I doing? Right.
Probably most people
I
feel
think it's
that
a
way.
whole facade, right? And it's like, I think people need to know that you do feel that, but you do it anyway
Right.
because you just love what you do. Like that kind of
Yes.
outweighs it.
Hmm.
And so in a sense, it's like, I think that if I didn't express my poetry, I mean, if I just wrote it for myself, that would have been enough. And what I'm loving is now putting it out there. I've met the most amazing people. Lucky here we are now. So only good has come from it. But I also say no regrets. I mean, I do leadership development and coaching, and Stephen Covey, right? Seven
Yeah.
Habits. And, he always talks about your 80th birthday and who's going to be there and what are they going to say,
Right.
really. And so in a sense, it's like, that's important. but I think it's also important, what would I say to myself? Did I kind of go for it? There
Yeah.
are calculated risks. You don't have to
Yes.
be crazy. But there's something, and I think that finding your voice and trusting that, and it's a process. And like I said, I have to keep coming back to it. That's why the daily practice of writing, that's why regular, coaching, that's why reading, personal development, kind of keeps me grounded. And, because it's just, I think it's a lifelong process. I don't know if anyone's
Right.
like figured it out, and then's kind of got it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the journey, right?
Yeah.
It's how you're living the journey that seems to really matter. And like you said, taking the risk of, doing something from your heart, it's scary, but in the end, there's such huge payoff
Yeah.
that it's, you can't imagine not doing it,
Correct.
right?
That is correct. Exactly.
So I think that you have another poem to read to us.
Yeah, I do actually. So this
Okay.
one, the first book, and is really about remembering who we are, like who we really are,
Yeah.
and figuring out who you are. The second book, Burst and Flourish, is really about, okay, so now that you've kind of figured yourself out, your perspective changes, your relationships change. Like when the inside changes, the outside's going to change. And really it's, my process, just again, sharing just my personal poems about how to do that. And this one poem that I couldn't even believe it. It came out in maybe about 5 minutes. I wrote this thing. It just kind of flooded out of me. And it was so important because a lot of times when you coach people, they, or for myself, people think there's like a whole laundry list of things. There's so many things that are wrong with me, right? And I just crack up and I'm like, well, maybe that's like the symptoms of it, but really, what I've come to find is that it's maybe one or two core issues. Like for me, it comes down to I didn't feel like I was enough. Now, how that was manifested out there, it was in different ways. But
Right.
if you can get to like the core root issue,
Yes.
it's so key. It's like life changing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is my poem that I wanted to share when I was getting to that point. And it's called Untangling Knots. So it's N-O-T-S, knots. But you could
Right.
also, again, I love the play on words, or it could be knots.
Of course.
Okay. I'm not going to keep saying I'm sorry to you anymore when I'm being faithful to me. I'm not going to reject myself before you reject me anymore, because the thoughts that prevent me from reaching out to you are what's holding me back. I'm not going to try and change your negative perceptions of me anymore, because my reputation in life becomes my legacy in death, all mostly untrue anyway. I'm not going to let your not lovely ways trigger me anymore, because it's how you play the game than what you win that ultimately defines success. I'm not going to harden myself to be unfeeling towards you anymore, because I can take off my armor and not be caught off guard, vulnerable, not defenseless. I'm not going to make myself small so you're more comfortable with me anymore, because regardless of whatever I do, you keep wanting less and less of me, and I can disappear on my own terms. I'm not going to give in to my vices to deal with you anymore, because I can recover easier now, not having to artificially cope with life when I'm living more authentically. I forgave you because I forgive me.
Wow, that is powerful. And again, the vulnerability theme comes up.
Yes.
And the last sentence, or the last phrase rather, I forgave you because I forgive me. It's so powerful to me that that's so important for people to understand and accept themselves. It's like your self-acceptance and who you are is perfect for you.
Right, exactly. And And there's a lot of shame or guilt, over certain
Yeah.
things that if you look at things from a different perspective, you don't want to deny what happened, right? There's certain
Right.
things that have happened in your life. And I think that is what happened. But the perception of it can really change from a very linear or very narrow focus. The more macro or broader that you get,
Mhm.
you realize that there are multiple interpretations. So again, there's no right or wrong, but you
Yeah.
can be a little bit more forgiving of yourself when you put yourself, in other people's shoes. And that is the invitation for at least the second book, which is to put yourself out and to really gather, because that perspective changes from like looking through a telescope to almost like a kaleidoscope. And
That's
it just looks
really
very
great.
symmetrical. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And just being able, did that poem, and you could share what you will wish to share. Is
Mhm,
that
sure.
poem based on a specific event, or was it a culmination of things that occurred?
This one I don't necessarily remember. But what was
Oh,
happening for me is like, so for me, it's not necessarily regarding a person when I write, it's a
mm-hmm.
feeling.
Got it.
So the feeling sometimes I pick up from others. This was definitely personal, but in a sense, it was almost like I was writing like a letter. It was almost like what I was picturing when I was writing, because it came down so quick. And it's almost like I don't know how people type. I need to write it and then like
Yes.
transfer it to typing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, it was almost like culmination. I was writing it to all like going back in time. It's like it was like a timeline of just
Wow.
like anybody or anything that and includes myself, because the way I wasn't it impacted me. It's
Mm.
like how I react to people is my stuff, but how other
Yes.
people react to me is their stuff. And I don't
Yeah.
have to let that, necessarily, that I don't have to necessarily receive. And so it was almost like kind of like a culmination
Mm.
of um, many people. It almost is like a
Interesting.
faceless. It's more a feeling type of that
It,
somebody brings on. Yeah.
and it seems like, it's a good reminder to take a step back and realize what is really going on for me or for whoever, and how to handle something. Because I feel like sometimes in dealing and building your confidence, instead of that knee-jerk reaction that you're trying to
Yeah.
fight off, because lots of times it doesn't help us, right?
Oh, good
Mhm.
luck with that. Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
instead, I feel like Untangling Knots really also talks about, building that confidence within yourself that, you can be vulnerable and not be hurt. And you can forgive. When you forgive yourself and you're accepting of yourself, instead of beating yourself up, everything else kind of falls into place,
Correct.
you
Right. And
know?
then it really just it all the triggers, it just starts feeling neutral. So again, those things
Yeah.
happened.
Hmm.
Um, but it's just more like it doesn't have that trigger feeling at all. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing those amazing pieces with us.
Sure.
And I wanted to just open up the floor and see if there are any questions or comments. And I unfortunately can't see if there are any questions or comments because of the way our Zoom is right now. And I'm looking on my phone um, to see if I can see anything, and I unfortunately can't. But
Okay.
I would say to anybody who is listening or watching and wants to participate, if you want to, after this is over, and Michelle and I can go back on and look at it, and if it's a question for Michelle, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer.
Sure.
And we would, obviously have Michelle come back on again. And by then I should be able to figure out how to read the responses or see the comments.
Yeah. Technology is not my forte.
Right. So
So,
I did, before we signed off, I just wanted Michelle to share with us. She has a couple of exciting things, coming up with a reading and then the book release. And if you could just share some of that with us, that would be awesome.
yeah. So I do have a virtual poetry reading. It's a free event next Wednesday, August 5th via Zoom. So you can go on my website to sign up. There's just a pop-up window. And my website, you can either type in Michelle Kaplan Poet or Burst and Flourish. And Flourish is floral, floral flourish, the F, like the French FLEURISH.com, Burst and Flourish. Also, the book, it is really exciting. I thought this would be out a couple of months ago. Maybe it's good timing with everything that was going on. You know, some divine timing going on there. But you know, that's in pre-order right now with Amazon. So it's coming out September 8th. And that's just only
So
a month
exciting.
away.
So you can find
yeah.
all both books you can find on, I got And on Amazon. So you can also find Burst and Flourish on Amazon.
And again, or my website.
Our website, burstandflourish.com. And if you do go on Michelle Kaplan Poet, Michelle spells her first name with 2 L's. So just want to make sure everybody knows that in case you're looking to find her that way. So Michelle, I wanted to thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Oh my God, thank you so
you're
much.
such an amazing inspiration, and I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with me about all this.
Thank you
it's
so
been
much,
really
Joyce.
Really fun.
Definitely.
And I wanted to thank everybody else who is on our live or will be watching later for spending time with us tonight. And I did want to just end by saying a couple things. The confidence interviews are brought to you by theconfidencehustle.com, which is my website. Our mission at The Confidence Hustle is to help as many single working moms as possible to build their confidence so they can achieve their really big goals. And if you'd like additional free resources about building your confidence, you can join our free private Facebook group, which is called Building Confidence, ! For single working moms 40 and over. And that's at facebook.com/groups/build confidence. And for a deeper dive with me personally on building your confidence, you can contact me directly via my website. Again, that's theconfidencehustle.com. And you can schedule a complimentary phone call with me. So thank you again so much for joining us, everybody. Be on the lookout for our next session of the confidence interviews, probably within 2 to 3 weeks. And I will send out more information as I have things confirmed. And thanks again, and have a great night, everyone. Take care. Bye.